Hello there, it's Malcolm Boudin here. Short video today. I'm just going to talk about something that some of you may or may not be aware that I'm just starting out on. So that's a CCIE Service Provider track. My high level objectives are to study towards the CCIE Service Provider and have some sort of lab attempt next year in 2019. So in order to achieve that, having completed the CCDE track last year, I learned some lessons around how to perform in the exam, but also from the preparation perspective. And one of the things that I definitely think that I need to do in the preparation perspective is to track my progress. I did track my progress to an extent by studying with other people who were like studying towards the CCDE, but I didn't have like a formal way of tracking my progress to determine whether I was actually ready or not, other than people giving you feedback. And with the greatest will in the world, that's not always the best way to determine whether you actually know the content to the level that you need to in order to pass the exam, because normally the people that you're studying with are your friends, right? So they all think that you're great, and you're competent in all the technologies, and you should pass the exam at the next time. But the reality is that you need to be really honest with yourself. So putting this down in writing in some way, shape, or form is my way of tracking my progress by being really honest about where I am in the journey. So how am I going to achieve that? How I'm going to achieve it, or how I think I'm going to try and achieve it, is to use just a simple Excel spreadsheet as a tracker. What I've done is I've pasted the objectives for everything to do with the CCIE Service Provider into a spreadsheet, and I've put some bells and whistles into the spreadsheet, color coded it a little bit, and now what I intend to do is to follow that spreadsheet as a tracker, record my lab hours, record my readiness towards the written exam, record my readiness towards the practical exam, and just to make it sort of clear that my strategy for the CCIE Service Provider is to get as ready as possible to attempt the lab exam, and then sit the written exam. Sorry. So just to recap, I'm gunning for studying towards the lab practical exam, and once I feel that I'm maybe like 70 to 80% of the way there from a lab and a configuration perspective, I intend to then sit the CCIE Service Provider written, and then shortly after that, maybe a month to 6 or 8 weeks after that, attempt the lab. So high level timelines. My CCDE requires recertification by the 29th of August 2019. So by that time, I really want to have passed the written exam for the CCIE Service Provider, hoping to do it at Cisco Live in the US in June. So let me share the spreadsheet, which I'll just bring up on the screen. So I call it CCIE Service Provider Tracker. Now, let me just sort my screen out. Now, this tracker is actually quite basic. It's nothing really any more than the CCIE Service Provider objectives pasted into a spreadsheet, and I've put some additional columns. So if I scroll down the spreadsheet, I've frozen the top cell so that I can always see that. I've got the domain, which is in line with the wording of the practical and the written exam combined blueprint, and then I've marked out all of the different subcategories and sections in black, and then they have the subsections. So for example, for MPLS traffic engineering, you've got that's section 1.4, and then 1.4a, b, c, d, e, f, exactly in line with the objectives on the PDF and the web-based blueprint. So then what I've done, so that's exactly in line with section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down, and I've even included the evolving technologies part. So that's fairly self-explanatory and straightforward. The next thing that I done was, I thought about how do I want to track this. I want to track, my progress towards the written exam, because I don't want to just, decide one day I'm ready for the written exam, because I think that I've read all these books and all the rest of it. I want, before I actually go into that, I'll just step back a bit. So I want to track my preparation for both the written and the practical exam. Now, the guidance that I've been given on the expert exams in the past is that if one of the objectives says describe, implement, and troubleshoot IS to IS or any technology, then that means that you're probably going to have to do that in both, in some way, shape, or form, in both the written and the practical exam, because it says describe, implement, and troubleshoot, right? So you can't not expect to get that in the lab exam, and if it's in the lab exam, it's probably going to be in the written exam. So if we look at another example somewhere further down, let me see, describe Lisp. So that based on my understanding is that you'll probably get asked some questions about Lisp and its general operation in the written exam, but you're probably not going to get a challenge on the practical exam. For me, I'll lab it up anyway. I have operational experience in Lisp, so I'll refresh myself on that. But I'm not going to be labbing up for hours and hours on Lisp. Maybe a few hours, that'll be it. And then if I get hammered with Lisp questions in the practical exam, I know that I need to revisit that. Anyway, so where the objectives say purely describe, I've put not applicable for the practical exam. So the X just means whether I anticipate this particular topic to be in the written exam or the practical exam, and then the columns to either of those are the status. So the written status. So this would be what percentage do I feel comfortable of being able to go into the CCIE Service Provider written exam and describe Lisp. So talk about what it is, how it functions, where you would use it, etc. And I've just put a placeholder number. These are, for the time being, these are just placeholder numbers. So I'm saying 50%, right? I then move to column E. So basically what we're doing there is putting 50%. If I was to put 25% in there, it would turn to red for both the written status. The practical status was already at 25, but then it would also change the average. So I said everything for the written, I'm pretty confident I'm about 40 to 50% of the way there. The way that I've weighted the color coding is if you're up to 33%, you're going to be at red status. If you're at 34%, you're going to be at amber status, and if you're at 79, you're still at amber, but if you're 80%, you're green. So just to give an example, if I'm 80, well, let's just say I was 85% confident on that subject matter, and then 80% from a practical exam perspective, that means the average of these two, because of the way that I'm working towards the practical exam, I really need column F to be all green. So let's just say 85, but all green for every single, I'm putting 85 in here, but it can be anything above 80%. And then that means this, overall readiness, estimated readiness is 85%, 92%, 82.5%, and then this goes the same all the way down through all the objectives. So that kind of explains how the spreadsheet is structured from how I'm going to evaluate my readiness. The second thing that I wanted to do was to track the amount of time that I'm spending on the study. I was doing a hell of a lot of study for the CCDE, but I never tracked it in any way other than in my head. And you can't really work on averages in your head if you really want some kind of fairly realistic number. Now, I'm not saying that I think that if I do the CCIE Service Provider track and I study for 1,000 hours or 500 hours or 600 hours, I'm going to pass, because I know that it doesn't work like that. But I think it's important to keep track of how many hours you are actually spending on this. So what I think I'm going to do is probably just update the number of lab hours incrementally, manually. So if this was in minutes, so if I said 15 minutes, and then the next time I spend 45 minutes, I'm going to change that to 60. I looked at potentially tracking the dates and all that and when I've done it, but I don't really want like a load of admin. This is enough admin for passing a technical expert exam. So anyway, the objective is to kind of track the number of lab hours which I'm going to be spending, and I can work out how to convert that into hours later on from minutes. But what this basically is going to result in is a total number here. So that's 60 minutes that I've spent on section 1. Same here, I think I've done, so that's just a formula that I need to sort out. But so let's come down here, right? So and it's also taking it as hours, where I need to translate that into minutes, as I said. But let's say that it was hours for the purposes of discussion. So we have a total number of hours here, which I'm setting my target number of hours to 1,000. So 1,000 hours minus 360 gives me my target number of remaining lab hours, and that's how I'm intending on tracking. So this is saying, based on what I thought that I needed to do, which was about 1,000 hours of labbing and study in order to get to where I want to get to, I've got to do about another 640. And that, in combination with the overall status, which is based on the written status and the practical status, written being theory and understanding, and a bit of config, and practical being IOS XE and IOS XR readiness to walk into the exam, giving us the average of the overall status and readiness to sit the exam. In combination with the number of lab hours, I think that will give me, as long as I'm honest about it, that'll give me a pretty good indication on how ready I am to sit the CCIE Service Provider. So moving on to the last couple of points, because I don't want this to be a really long video. On the master tracker for each objective, well, I've not completed this yet, but my intention is to, for example, if we take describe objective 1.1a, describe, implement and troubleshoot IS to IS. So this, the written study and the practical study will be driven by what's in this section I. So that's the comments and the main topics to cover. So if I zoom in on this a little bit, it will give you an idea of the type of thing that I'm putting in. So for describe, implement and troubleshoot IS to IS, I'm expecting that I'm going to be proficient in level 1-2 routing, multi-topology, single topology, narrow and wide metrics, look-back reachability between different levels for MPLS, passive interfaces and look-back reachability, prefix suppression in the core. So that's the point-to-point links between the different P and PE nodes. LSA and SPF timers with exponential backoff. IPv6 address families in IS to IS and the migration to IPv6, hello padding, and I'm sure there's some other things that I'll include in there. So my intention is to basically list these out and work through them all for every single topic that's in this tracker. And I'm confident, you know, that I can get pretty close to what actually needs to be studied for each of the, you know, the exam topics, because I know this blueprint objectives PDF requirement sheet pretty well, because I used it as a guide for the CCDE, also the CCIE Service Provider. So that really sums up the master tracker sheet. The final thing that I'm going to be doing on this journey, or my intention, wherever it's feasible, is to keep some kind of log around iOS command versus iOS XR. So that would be iOS XE versus iOS XR. So column A will be the iOS XE command. Column B will be the iOS XR command. Then I'm going to put, like, you know, a short description and then use cases in, and the category. So that would be like core routing section 1.0, for example, but I'm still fleshing that part out. So in summary, the objective of what is the objective of all of this? It probably seems like a lot of paperwork, and, you know, a lot of people dislike the documentation side of things, but I've always found that, you know, when I've done documentation to support what I'm doing, it's always helped me in delivering what I'm actually intending on delivering. So I'm almost designing my approach to passing the CCIE Service Provider, and facilitating a way for me to track my progress in a logical manner. There will be other things that I'll be doing on this journey as well, like, you know, working with other people who are going down the same path, having discussions on Slack and things like that as well. I'm doing like CCIE Service Provider Bootcamp via Micronics, which is 10 weeks long, between November and January, November 2018 and January 2019. You know, I'll be going to Cisco Live next year in the US, so I may do a laboratorial if there's one available. And yeah, and that really provides a summary of what this blog was about. So CCIE Service Provider, I'm at the start of the journey. I think I'm in a good place. I've got the planning in place, and now it's a case of hitting the books, hitting the labs. I'll try to do more videos on my progress, specifically if there's something that I think might be of interest, if there's something weird and wonderful that I come across, or maybe just a general update now and then. So on that note, I'm going to leave the video there. Thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful for you, and if there's anything that you want to know about my approach, feel free to leave a comment, contact me, and until then, peace out. Speak to you soon. Thanks.